This episode of Truth Table is brought to you by our NAACP Image Award nominated book, Truth Table, Black Women's Musings on Life, Love, and Liberation. Get it where all books are sold.
Sisters, how y'all feel? Brothers, y'all all right? If this is your first time at Truth Table, welcome to the table. And if you've been sitting at the table with us all these years, we are so grateful that you have been listening to us through these years, and we are inviting you to partner with us and support our work at patreon.com/truthstable. Now pull up a chair and have a seat at the table with us. Hey y'all, welcome to Truth Table, Midwives of Culture for Grace and Truth. I'm Ekemini.
And I'm Christina.
This table is built by Black women and for Black women. So welcome to the table, C. How you doing, girl?
I'm doing pretty good. We just had a good lunch. So I'm over here thinking about,
to be loved.
We do eat the meat. And so I'm over here thinking about the burger that I just had.
It's delicious.
Which was,
very filling.
God bless the vegans and the vegetarians. I see you. I affirm you.
Yes.
And I will eat the meat that you do not eat right now.
That is funny. And look at the sun that came out now. Look at it.
Yes.
The sun will come out.
Yes.
Tomorrow.
All right. That's a musical moment.
Hang on to tomorrow.
You gotta hang on. But what if you're tired of hanging on? Come what may.
God. Unchanging hand. God's hand don't never get tired. Thank God.
Listen, God's hand doesn't get tired, but we do.
Okay, because I'm like, woo. So y'all, the topic on the table is still waiting on God.
Still waiting on God.
Yet holding on.
Well, one of the things that obviously we have friendships with people and women all over the country and outside of the States, but also in the Facebook Black Women's Discipleship group, this is a theme that I feel like has come up at times, right? This this sense of what does it mean to be persevering. And I always talk about dusting off our prayers. So there are some prayers that we've prayed for so long that they have cobwebs and dust on them.
That's right.
But to still be praying the same prayer. Like how do you persevere in that? Still waiting on God. Still waiting on God. And so maybe we can start here. What messages have you gotten about what it means to wait on God?
Messages I've received about what it means to wait on God. Well, there are some negative ones that I've received where, where it's just kind of like, well,
those are memorable. Yeah.
Maybe there's, where people kind of morph into Job's friends.
Oh.
Where, if you're suffering, if you did, or you're going through, or you're waiting, or it's not happening, then it's you. You're the problem. Yeah. You did something. You sinned. Somebody in your lineage, all of a sudden generational curses. Listen,
and I'm sure this is
depending on what camp you're in, right? What theological camp you're in, you hear all types of things.
All manner of things.
You're right. So there's those sometimes those negative things where you're thinking, man, it was me. I'm the problem. So then you can start to really, internalize that and go, maybe I'm not. Maybe the Lord doesn't love me. Maybe I did do something. Maybe I am in some egregious sin that I really don't know about. Yeah. And so you can really begin to kind of be like, I don't know, just kind of looking for a sin buster. Like, where is it at? Instead of knowing that God actually forms us through perseverance, and it gets the fruit of perseverance to bear in our lives by waiting, by delaying, by waiting. But he just has an appointed time for all manner of opportunities, blessings, people. To come into our lives. And the tension of that is that our time does not align with God's time most of the time.
For sure.
I don't think my time ever aligns with God's time. There's so many things that I already thought I would have by now, or things that I feel like, well, Lord, we did do all this. Where's the harvest? And waiting and the distance between seed time and harvest time. And then you start, and it's not even other people. And then you start to question yourself. And you start to go, did I miss God? Did I not hear God on this?
Yeah.
Did I go the wrong direction? You're like, did I miss a turn somewhere? Where did the road turn, Lord? Like, or when is the road going to turn? So you start really questioning yourself, I think, in that weight. I think obviously on the positive end too, you think about, the perseverance, and our trials create in us perseverance, and perseverance, produces hope within us, and hope does not disappoint. And we know that hope is a person, right? And so we can trust that what it is that we're hoping for, that if it is indeed in God's will, it will actually come to pass.
Right.
And it may not come to pass in a way that we think it ought to come to pass, right? Sometimes the answers to prayers manifest in completely different ways than we anticipated, especially prayers for provision.
That's right.
Right? Sometimes
right.
It's like, oh, I didn't, Lord, I was asking for money, but now you done provided this food bank, right? This food bank at this church down the street that provides free food for me as I'm struggling to pay for groceries with these inflation prices and these egg prices and you know what I mean? These are ways that God does provide. It's just sometimes we don't. We can mistake God's provision due to our own vision, for our lives.
Yeah.
So yeah. What messages have you received about waiting on, about still? Because something about waiting on God, we all know we're going to wait on God.
Yeah.
But it's like when it's still.
When you still.
Waiting on God.
Yeah.
Like, you still believe in God for that?
Yeah. Well, and when I was listening to you talk about kind of just out the gate, Job's friends, but also the internalization of Job's friends, right?
Exactly.
Like, because, it's not always the external voice, but the internal voice, right?
That's right.
That seeds the doubt and points and accuses, right? Yeah. That accuses and accuses the beloved. And I think when we start to hear accusations in which we know that we have been redeemed from, then that's a signal that something is amiss, right? When there's an accusation that's taking place, a kind of an internal accuser for us. And then also, the truth is the Lord, it reigns on the just and the unjust. And so I think feeding ourselves truth is going to be helpful when the accusations come up about our worthiness to be blessed, our worthiness to receive the promises of God, because it's not based on our worthiness. It's based on the fact that God has promised and God's character and God's covenant keeping ways. And so that, I think, shifts us from having to be the keepers of God's promise. And God has not forgotten. So this is me really kind of talking to myself right now. I think one of the messages that I've heard about what it means to still be waiting on God is a lot about how we wait.
Okay, yeah.
It's like what you do in the waiting, and how you how you kind of present yourself in the waiting, or can you complain about the waiting, or if you get a little frustrated along the way, does that mean you're gonna have to wait longer? Like, in other words, is the waiting designed to kind of buffet you in a way until you surrender? And I do think in some ways I do kind of embrace a bit of a surrender theology for the good and the bad of that, right? But I do have a sense that there are things in my life that it required that I completely let it go. And that's easier said than done.
Yes, it is.
It's easier. It's not common, because I'm a person who feels like, okay, I'm somewhat scrappy. I can kind of make things happen. And it has to be a circumstance that is beyond like intellect, scrappiness, you name it. That's just like, okay, I have no choice but to let this go.
That's right.
And I have seen God bring to pass on promises beyond my imagination, right? And so, but it's rare that has happened. So I think part of me does have this sense, this kind of belief system that our surrender, learning to really trust, is a part of seeing that promise come to pass. And at the same time, part of me also knows that can't become a work. That the trust or the surrender itself then makes God move God's hand.
Okay, it's all grace.
It's all
or
grace.
It's nothing at all.
It's all grace.
Or it's all you. And if it's all you, you have to uphold it.
And it's not working out if it's all.
If it's all you, then it's gonna fall apart. If it's all you, it's got to be all grace, right? So yeah. So when I think about waiting on God and what it takes, I think that sometimes sometimes it's confounding. Sometimes, even though we don't have to wait on God, we know that we see examples all throughout the scripture about waiting on God, right? And how some of the saints didn't wait so well, and they tried to do things on their own strength, right? So Abraham and Sarai.
Listen, disastrous.
Gets so complicated, so much pain, so much trauma, so much abuse.
Listen,
you know what I mean? You got to name that, But then you think about, I think that's the part of waiting on God for me that's always like, I'm always like, I'm confused. But it's so funny, wasn't it Peter that says like, why are you, when you face trials and when you're crying, why are you acting brand new? Like, what? Like, you're gonna go through these things. Why are you acting? It's like
this has been stated.
Some strange thing is happening to you. I'm like, because it is strange. What's happening? Why is this happening? So, I'm confounded. I'm confused.
Right.
And that's one of my core issues. I do not like being confused. I'm like, surely 1 + 1 = 2. Then you take the 2 and you add the other 2 and you get 4. And then we're here.
Not the math.
What is the issue here? I'm like, what's going on? I did this, Lord. You told me to do this.
Right.
What is happening? Why is this? Why is everything else happening?
Yeah.
And y'all, if you just knew the way my life is set up and the story is in my life. And Christina knows. I'd be like, okay, now this don't make no sense. I'm just like...
Why?
But I gotta surrender. I have no choice because I cannot work it out in my mind logically, and that gets on my nerves. But you cannot. This is not. Right? It's all by grace. All of it is by grace. And I think wait on God. It's just so it can be hard because sometimes it really is confusing because you're just like, and you're talking about. Not sometimes it's 2 years, sometimes it's 5 years, sometimes it's a whole 10, sometimes 20 years. People are waiting for years, sometimes 40. I mean, people wait on God for things for a long time, and I think in that time, of course, the Lord is shaping us and molding us and strengthening us, but I think that, and we could talk about this probably a little bit later, but what it means to wait well on God, versus not waiting so well on God, because it makes a great difference. So actually, let's talk about that after our commercial break.
For sure.
Yes. So we'll be right back, y'all.
Our NAACP Image Award nominated book, Truth Table, Black Women's Musings on Life, Love, and Liberation, is making waves and shifting culture. I closed this book feeling like I had just partaken in a multi-course meal, filled with grace and the courage to carry on. And I believe you'll finish this book feeling the same way. Morgan Harper Nichols, artist and poet. Buy Truth Table, Black Women's Musings on Life, Love, and Liberation, at our website or wherever books are sold.
All right, we are back at the table, y'all, talking about still waiting on God.
Spell that still.
So we're talking about what it means, though. Before the break, I was talking about, let's get into what it means to wait well on God. Because what we don't want is for our still waiting on God to turn into steal.
That's right.
STEEL.
Come on.
Waiting on God.
Because word cleverness.
Listen, wordplay. Black folks, we love a wordplay. Look at we love a wordplay.
Listen.
But
who should not?
Yes, who should not? Who among us? But there is a sense in which if we're not careful, the weight and where we put our gaze as we wait can really cause us to get hardened, to become embittered and harden up like steel.
Yeah.
While we are still waiting on God, right? Yeah. Whenever we're talking, because I've waited on God for some things for a long time. You've been waiting on God for some things for a long time.
For sure.
We be waiting, the waiting rangers, okay? My goodness.
Waiting to exhale, waiting to manifest.
Waiting. And so you often have this phrase that I always love, please. I don't think you've said it on the podcast. It's probably in our phone calls.
That the bitter will break.
That's right.
The bitter will break. You have to, we have to stay soft. We have to stay flexible. And by soft, that doesn't mean that we tolerate mistreatment but gentleness is in our best interest. And I know it doesn't always seem that way, but it is in our best interest to stay flexible, gentle, moldable by God.
That's right.
To stay grateful. That actually is
gratitude keeps us
exactly
and gentle and malleable and pliable.
Exactly. And so it's so important. As I was reflecting on kind of our conversation, I was thinking about how in the still waitingness of it all, part of my frustration that I'll confess is not because I don't think that God cannot do it. Like I typically don't doubt the power of God.
Right.
There are people who do doubt. That's kind of the way that their doubt or their faithlessness manifests itself. Is like, what can God do? No, I don't doubt what God can do. Like I'm a literal resurrection person. Like I think if Jesus could be raised from the dead, God has power. So it's never an issue of the power of God to make something come to be. It is more so where I would confess my doubt is in, which ultimately is an issue of me thinking about God's character. But to have to admit that out loud is, will God do this for me?
Oh yeah, that's what I was just about to say. Yeah, that's that's my struggle.
Yeah, does God have a high tolerance with my suffering? Does God have a high tolerance for my exhaustion or my fatigue, right? So then I begin to put God's character on trial.
On trial, yeah.
So rarely do I put God's power on trial. It's really more so God's character. Then I have to confess that. And I'm like, whoa, that is definitely sinful, because certainly God is more gracious and kind and giving and generous than I, and even I to myself in my imagination, right? At the end of the day. But that usually is the tension for me, because I know that God has the power. And I have seen things turn on the dime. Like I have seen I've seen prayers, people stop praying the prayer, and then all of a sudden, within 24 hours, something that people thought could never happen happens.
That's right.
So I know that things can change. It usually is the tension point for me of, is God going to do this for me?
Yeah.
And am I going to become bitter if it is in God's divine decision to say no for you right now? And I do believe that God can say no to us.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially with all our ideas, God can definitely say no to us.
God gets to say no to us, y'all. God, and you know what? God's no is just as holy as his yes.
That's right.
And I know it's hard, right?
And just as good.
And it's just as good. As good. I think that for me is a struggle in the wait too. Is the It's knowing that God can do it, but has not done it. Right. Because God has not doesn't mean that God will not do it.
Right.
But God has not done it. But whatever it is that you're waiting on, it's like for me, I struggle with forgottenness. So feeling forgotten, by God, or I've seen God do it. I know. Like I could believe God for everything for everybody else. I'm like, because I know I've seen God do it. I've seen God answer specific prayers that I prayed on behalf of people.
That's right.
I've had God give me dreams for people that I've seen come to fruition and come and have manifested from like, yeah, praise God. You know what I'm saying? And I'm genuinely happy and rejoicing with them. But I'm like, I haven't, those things that I've been believing God for, I haven't seen them happen yet. In my life. So I wonder, will it ever happen? Yeah. Or is it me that it just won't happen for me? Or it's just like, well, you my child, you can bear under, you can keep going and waiting, and and then you do put God's character on trial. Right. And there's times where I feel like, God, I just feel like, Lord, you really playing games with my life. There are times where I feel like you are playing games.
This is a very real prophet style prayer. How long, oh Lord? Yeah.
Why? And how long? Oh Lord, what is going on in my life? Like, why all this chaos and mayhem?
Yeah. The prophets are like, the prophets say things like, God, don't you see my enemies?
Right.
Laughing at me.
That's right.
You can sense
and they summon God to strike them down.
Well, that's
precatory prayers.
An additional piece. Yeah, for sure.
It's a lot. There's things that will jump off in my life. Like there's a time where, I've moved quite a bit. And so I know when God is trying to move me, from a place, when you've moved enough, you kind of get a sense on, all right, things are drying up in this land.
Stirring.
There's a stirring. So there was a time, a couple of years ago where it was clear, like, okay, God wants me to move.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, God, I accept that. I'm going to move.
It was some Technicolor signs.
But it was getting a little out of control.
I was like, is your apartment going to catch on fire today? I mean, it was starting to get like, and you should pack.
It was given Old Testament. It was given Exodus plagues. It's like, what's going on here? Yeah. No, but literally, like, it was clear to me that, okay, the Lord was shifting things. It was time to move, and I had accepted that, and I was like, okay, I am going to move. And then all of a sudden, y'all, this place that I've been staying for a long time, I had mold in my apartment, y'all. It was like, but God, I had already, okay, but I'm going to move. What is the issue? And it's required like not just a moving down the street, although all moves are very involved. But this was moving out of state. And so I'm like, why the mold? Why, God? I had already said I'm going to move. Like, I hear you. I'm doing this. Right. What is going on? It was definitely some extra stank. It was really, literally. And like, I want to say a good 40% of my wardrobe was immersed and covered in mold. You're talking even my pillow. So it was even starting to affect me bodily. So I went to the doctor, and they, drew blood, and it was in my system. It was, y'all.
It is not a game.
This is not an exaggeration. It was a lot going on. A very dark period. And so it was just a lot going on. But anyway, all that to say, the confusion. When I tell y'all about the confusion.
It's the non-funny sitcom of life. It's like, this is not funny because I'm in this story.
It's like, why, God, why? So anyway, things that you just don't always understand. Like, I still, to this day, I don't know what the meaning of all that was for. I really don't. I still don't get it. I'm like, well, what's the interpretation of that? I don't know. Yeah. Like, I still don't get it. Because I had already okay, I'm going to do God. I had already decided, and agreed with God on that. And then, but there's things that we just don't understand, right? We don't know.
Yeah.
So I could have let that get me hard, and and y'all, I went through a whole lot to just get all of this rectified and taken care of and whatnot. But I had to continue to keep. Where else am I going to go? Yeah. Where else am I going to go? Jesus has the words of life, like, for real. So I was just like, okay, I'm going to trust you in this, and I'm going to trust you. And I did. I had to do a lot of work. I had to do some legal stuff to get compensated. It was a lot.
Clearly,
y'all.
Clearly,
I'm tired thinking about it. But you can. I think that a good safeguard from becoming bitter and hardening into steel is staying on our knees in prayer, in worship.
Yeah.
I love listening to sermons, good sermons. And so those are some of my disciplines that help me, of course, talking to Christina, she's like, what's happening now? Yes. But friends, you need good friends, good community, people that, that understand, that empathize, that walk with you. They also see like, what is happening?
But I'm like, no, this is bad. This is bad. This is bad. Like, I'm on live. Something's bad. I'm like, this is bad. This is unusually bad.
What is happening? Right? Biblical proportions.
Yes.
But those things help. You know what I mean? So I think that, and I think because I've been walking with the Lord for a while, you kind of know, you learn how to encourage yourself.
That's right.
In a way, you learn how to encourage yourself. And the Bible talks about, a bruised reed. He will not break. So when God sees that you're weak, he knows our frame. He remembers that we are dust. I always love that. I think that's Psalm 103.
Yeah.
But I think about a reed. A reed sways through the wind, right? The ebbs and flows, the winds of life.
Yeah.
But it will never, ever break. God will never, ever break us. And I think that in order for us to sway with the changing winds of the weight, because we're going to go through all types of ebbs and flows, during the way, we have to stay soft. We have to stay gentle. We have to stay malleable. And the only thing that really keeps our hearts soft in those times is worship. For real. It is reading the word. Right. It is it's prayer.
Yeah.
And then when you struggle,
even prayer for your enemies.
Well, yes. Praying for your enemies. And then when you struggle to pray, when you're like, or maybe when you're mad, right? You'll have those times when you probably feel mad at God. Sure. And I don't want to go. When you have friends. Hopefully you have some good friends that can pray on your behalf, right?
That's right.
You need people that can speak your name in your circumstance, before the throne of God. And absolutely, you're one of those people for sure, that have been walking with me, through the weights of life.
The still waiting.
Waiting.
As humans, one of the things that, there are many things that separate us from the animal life.
That's right.
But one of the things about humans is that we create stories. It's kind of how our brain works. Like our identity, our culture, nations, people groups are all compilations of stories. And America is very good at this because we have a whole bunch of mythology.
A lot of myths
about who we are. We've stolen a lot from like Babylonian and Grecian culture, and we're like, we're the most magical place in the world, right?
We're not,
and but the U.S. is not the only place. I mean, nations create myths, right? Especially when they don't really want to handle the truth of their real history. Mm-hmm. And we do that on an individual level. We create story. And this is why when we are still in the waiting and we can't figure it out, we start to really demand to know why. Like we want, so what is the purpose of this? Like it's often like, so what does this mean? Why did this suffering happen? And why did this person have to die? And why was it a no at this time? And there's, why couldn't I have gotten on that bus instead of that bus?
Yeah.
I can think of moments where, something's just a matter of somebody running just a few moments late.
Grabbing something they left.
Yes. And it's the difference between them being alive now and not.
That's right.
And those things they just wreck our brains.
They do.
And part of it, I think over the last couple of years, I have started thinking and reflecting on what it means for God to give us a peace that's beyond understanding or that does not require understanding. It's really how I would interpret that text. A peace that surpasses or that is not contingent upon understanding. Because there are some things that I'm just not going to understand. That's not because I have there are some people, there are some faith traditions that people would describe as anti-intellectual, right? And I think some of that's probably rooted in all kinds of bigotry and whatnot, by the way. But I am not anti-intellectual when it comes to faith. We do love God with our mind, right?
Absolutely.
But yet and still, I recognize that it is a blessing to have peace and not need to know how everything is going to work out and why it happened. Like if I'm not going to have relief until I know all the facts.
Let me at least have some peace, Lord.
Oh my goodness. But imagine that. Imagine like I'm not going to have peace until I know all the facts, until I know exactly why this person did what they did.
Facts don't comfort though. And I love that. I love facts now. I love facts.
Well, facts, you're right. Facts don't comfort. And we know from social science work that facts actually don't change people's minds.
Exactly.
Like politically speaking, we can tell people all day long about these are the facts of this particular issue, right? And people are like, okay, because
I still want my AR-15.
Listen, I still would like an arsenal, So people are not moved by facts.
Yeah, that's
they are moved by psychological safety. And this, and it doesn't mean that the lack of psychological safety is rooted in something that's reality, but fear is still fear, no matter if it's legitimate or not. And having a peace that does not require understanding is having this complete spiritual and psychological safety. And God can give that.
That's right.
To us. And there are incidences in my life that I can think over the last decade, especially where I went back and forth with God, like really?
Why, God?
Like, why? Yeah. Like, that's just, where it felt deeply, deeply unkind. Again, I never doubt the power of God. So I'm like, well, God, you could intervene in all these ways. Or I rarely doubt the power of God. But when I surrendered that to, can you grant me a peace even though I don't have understanding? And I can still acknowledge the corruptness and the suffering of that experience. Sometimes we don't want the peace that surpasses understanding because we think that if we have peace about it, then we're now justifying it. And we think it was okay if it was a painful or traumatic experience. And no, you can say this was wrong. This is wicked. This is painful. This is grief. I wish this person was still here. Fill in the blanks, right? And yet, I'm going to embrace this peace while I wait to get full understanding.
Right. That's right. I love that. Yeah, it reminds me of, I think it's Isaiah 26:3 that says, he'll keep in perfect peace the one whose mind is stayed on him. And, there's a song, because I listen to a lot, I will listen to a song over and over until until I get it in my spirit. This is like, I always hear them like, and so he'll keep me in perfect peace. Perfect
over
peace.
And over.
And if I keep my mind stayed on thee, if I keep just like you promised me,
right?
You promised that you would keep me in perfect peace. And so it's like, if you don't have the peace, that's the prayer point. Look, give me perfect peace. You promised this. You promised that you would keep me in perfect peace.
Yep. And peace in every sense of the word peace.
Every sense.
In every sense of the word peace. So peace with God. There's a reconciled relationship. Peace with myself, that I'm not at war with myself. Exactly. But also this sense of peace, this calming of a storm within, that there is a way in which, and again, I'm very pro mental health and psychological treatment for anxiety disorders.
Yes.
And I think what's amazing about it is that I believe that you can have a God-given peace even as you are treating anxiety and depression.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And part of the peace is knowing that God extends to you whatever form of healing and medication and support that you need. That's a part of the peace, is the permission to be as healthy as you can be.
Yeah. And I think, that's good. It's holistic,
right?
This piece. And I think that even when we're waiting on God, I'm thinking about some of the additional disciplines or the things that we do, like in the wait, like for instance, it's like sometimes there's something like so God is so gracious, it's like, do we know how to listen in for God's voice when God is speaking to us in the way graciously. Right. And sometimes we it takes a level of spiritual maturity, to get to the point where you're like, I think that was the Lord trying to tell me something. Like, you know what I'm saying? I think God's trying to tell me something right now. Right. And so, but seriously, in the way, like cultivating those spiritual disciplines so that we can actually hear the Lord clearly. Yeah. Sometimes waiting on God requires us to fast, which is a real struggle for me, y'all. A real struggle. I think I've said this on the show 11 times. Fasting is a struggle for me. Pray for me.
Listen, as it ought to be.
But it is important for us to do, y'all. It's important, right? But like even, because there are times like even now I'm waiting on God and God has been so gracious to actually speak. I actually feel like I've heard God much more clearly in this season that I'm in this wait. And I actually think I'm at the tail end of the wait. But than I have even in the past. And God, not to say God's never spoken, but God has been speaking to me very clearly about some things. Because I think God knows his daughter. Yeah. And he knows I'm prone to anxiety and concerns and fears.
We have kind of tailor-made. It's like a thoughtful parent recognizes that you don't.
I need to give my baby.
You need to love all. You need to love all your children deeply. And the same. But every child needs something
specifically,
different.
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel like, God has been so kind to speak to me so clearly about some things specifically, to me personally, and then sending other people. Strangers
to echo
and to confirm, complete strangers, which Christina has witnesses, and it's like,
I have witnesses.
Like, I got a witness, y'all. Like, it's just like, wow, the Lord has just been so gracious, to do that. So all that to say, I really want us to be able to, in the way, learn to cultivate spiritual disciplines, right? Of prayer, reading the word for sure, asking God questions, being honest with God, and asking God to speak to you, to reveal to you, just to direct your path, right? To direct your path. And I think that because God has spoken and given me some specificity on some things, that I have a peace in this, because there's some confusion here. Some confusion in the land. Like, wait, what? Why is the math not mathing? And I don't even like math, but why is the math not mathing? Okay, weird.
Embrace the mathematics.
I'm embracing the confusing mathematics. But God has already given me some. I told you this time. I told you that. All right. I'm like, okay, God, I'm going to do what you told me to do.
Trust and rest.
And trust and rest. And keep my eyes fixed on you.
That's right.
Not going to the left, not going to the right, not looking over there, what you doing over there with Pookie and them. Mind your business. That's the thing, because that also embitters us. Yeah. Looking at what God is doing for other people.
Coveting.
Oh, coveting.
I mean, there's a whole thing about it. It's a whole thing about it. Thou shalt not covet.
I think there's a whole commandment about that.
It's important. It's important to stay focused on what God has for you.
Exactly.
And then also, I would say this,
but to rejoice with others too.
To truly and genuinely celebrate other people. And I think when there's something that I've been longing for that I want to come to pass, it's hard for me sometimes to not make everything about the thing that I want to come to pass. And just because that's my priority does not mean that is God's priority for me. God could very well have another lesson, another focus for me. And yet everything that's happening, I'm seeking it to be about the thing that I care most about. And God is like, that's not my top concern for you. That's not my top concern for you. Like what you're worried about. Okay, you got that. I know that. I got other matters at hand for you. And so I think at some point releasing ourselves to, Lord, you know that I care about X, Y, Z, whatever it is. But I also want to care about what you care about for me.
That's right. Change my desires so that I care about what you care about. Yeah.
And grant me those desires.
That's a mature prayer now. I mean, a prayer.
It is. But it is a prayer that I've been praying some version of that for the last maybe 15 years of my life, which is, God, grant me the desires of my heart, which not meaning give me what I want, but give me the desires that I should want.
Yes. Yeah. Give me what to desire.
And that way I am not tempted into bitter faithlessness because I'm like, I want this and you didn't give this to me. But instead, fill my heart with all the things that you want for me to have, that you have promised to me as you bring them to pass in my life.
That's right. And I think that when we give those desires and even the good desires over to the Lord, I think we got to hold our desires loosely, because when we have a grip on that, right, it can easily turn into an idol.
Right.
And I think we got to watch that. And you can,
and an answered prayer can be an idol.
Absolutely.
We can begin to use God to answer a prayer, and God's answer to the prayer becomes more important to us than God.
That's right. And, prayer is just a means to an end. It can be very transactional in that way.
Oh, yes.
You're right about that. So there's ways in which we are just so prone toward legalism and works righteousness naturally, in some ways where we could just easily slide into that, where it's like, prayer becomes a duty, instead of like a delightful, experience. And I'm not trying to say prayer is always delightful.
It is a discipline.
Sometimes, and sometimes it is a discipline, and sometimes we really are like we're wrestling, in the spirit, and we are and I think that there's some things that I think in the way, I think that I just want us to have some liberty to know that you can go in and do what you need to do, because it's spiritual warfare.
Right.
I think we can't forget about that, even during the wait. There's a lot of this spiritual forces at work. Remember in the book of Daniel talking about the angel was like, archangel was like, I was held up 21 days. God answered you, but it was held up for 21 days. I could not bring that. I can't remember exactly where. I can't remember. It is in Daniel, but I can't remember exactly. Maybe 12. I can't remember what the passage is or what chapter it is. But it was held up for 21 days. This opposition, spiritual opposition. It helps us to remember that this is really spiritual.
I know.
Y'all. Like a lot of these things.
I know.
Like we gotta pull it down.
Yes. The flesh, the devil, and the world. And I think that kind of the modern expressions of faith has oftentimes a resentment and an embarrassment about spiritual things and spiritual warfare. We think that it is
praying in the spirit,
opposition to our intellect and all the things, and yet without an understanding of we wrestle not against flesh and blood, and like we really have to have an appreciation that there are dynamics that are happening that are beyond our ability to see, and that God is protecting us in the wait.
That's right.
God really is protecting us. There are things that we just really can't see. I mean, I've heard people talk about this idea of what glory will be like, and you'll have the opportunity to see all that was really happening in your
I hope so.
In your little old boring life.
I want to see this reality show. I want to see this reality show.
Exactly. And then when the veil is pulled back and we really get to see all the ways that at specific moments, there's protection happening. There's blessings opening up to us. There's a book that appears. I mean, all of these things are being orchestrated that we can't see right now. We have to entrust ourselves to the one who sees and knows all things. And yet we'll have one day we will see all that.
Yeah, we will see it. And because I'm like, listen, I got to, I was like, my life is far from boring. I'm going to know what's going on.
we would like precedented times and not unprecedented times.
Don't want any more.
Can we live that boring life?
No, but that's true, because when I think about God's appointed time, this is what my name means, y'all. Mm-hmm. And so I'm true to this.
We're gonna give you a nickname that means like right now.
Right now time. I'm gonna change my name to right now.
Right now. Okay. Right now. like Saul becomes Paul. We gonna, that happens sometimes. We might need to get you a nickname.
My name is right now.
My name is congratulations. My favorite
name is
viral
blessings
clip.
Always. Never any tribulation. No, but. But you do not want, whatever it is that you believe in God for, you do not want it sooner than God's got it, and you don't want it later. You really do want it when God has it. And I know it's hard and but you really do want it that time, because any other time, that thing could fall apart. Or it could be you never really know. Especially if whatever it is that you believe in God involves other people. Listen. You better let God do what God's going to do.
Yeah, well, it's so much involves other people, because we're interconnected and interdependent. Right. And so there's so much happening in a natural and spiritual sense that is just beyond what we know.
We only know about one thing, if even that. We only know in parts.
And we don't even, I mean.
We don't even know that much, right?
Very limited. So I think we're going to still keep waiting. And I would encourage the people that are listening and are waiting that we see you. And more importantly, God sees you. And God is not mocking you in your waiting. God is with you in your waiting. Yeah. And Jesus has been waiting for a very long time to return for his bride. And
That's right.
This is a God who knows about wait, a God who has all power, all access, and yet continues to be in solidarity with us.
That's right.
And knowing what it means to wait.
That's right. He's waiting for his bride, waiting to have that communion together for us in glory. Waiting.
It's an amazing description.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's not get weary. That's the part. Let's not get weary.
And if we are, let's go rest by quiet streams.
Get renewed.
That's right.
Get refreshed.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
And the Lord does give you times of refreshing, and does give you the grace to keep putting one foot in front of the other.
That's right.
God does. I'm a witness. You're a witness. Amen. You know what I mean? So be encouraged, and just keep keeping on.
That's right.
And I cannot wait to hear the testimonies that will come from
That's right.
still waiting on God, right?
That's right.
I cannot wait. Y'all, please send us your testimonies about when God does answer. Yeah. Right? When God does answer.
Or when God has already answered for you.
Or where God has, maybe God has already answered, or God is answering already in the moment. You're beginning to see the manifestation of that. So please send us your testimonies. I know, because it's encouraging. We'd love to hear that. I think that'd be wonderful. So anyway, thank y'all for taking a seat at the table with us this week. Let's keep the conversation going. Make sure you send us your testimonies. Give us your thoughts, the disciplines that you practice in the wait that keep you encouraged, so that you're soft and gentle and malleable and don't get bitter and brittle and break. We don't want that.
And funky.
Yeah, we don't want that. So please share that with us either on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or email us at asktruthstable@gmail.com. So we'll see you soon on the next Truth Table. Bye, y'all.